Once upon a time, there was a guy called Matt. Every day after he woke up, he took finasteride to keep his hair. One day, he wanted to style his hair as usual, but realized that his density was not the same as it used to. Because of that, he started blaming his barber for messing up his haircut, until finally he realized it was not the barber who was to blame. Finasteride is not able to keep your hair as it used to, huh? Don't worry, after watching this video, you will have a working solution. Before we start, as always, shout out to our sponsor GoFiber. These are hair building fibers you can use to mask any thinning or patchy areas on your scalp to make your hair look thicker and better. So make sure you check out the link in the video description below where you can visit GoFiber, get a free sample of your choice and try them out. See if you like them. So the next step Matt did after his finasteride realization was that he went online and started searching for some alternatives for finasteride. And what he found there will probably surprise many of you guys. For example, on this website, Scandinavian Biolabs, he found out minoxidil, low-level laser therapy, vitamin D or saw palmetto being offered as alternatives to people who stopped seeing results with finasteride or cannot take finasteride. Or the other website, which is I think even a pharmacy, where they offer zinc, ayurvedic medicine or even hair transplants as potential solutions for people who stopped seeing results with finasteride or simply cannot even tolerate it. But these treatments are no long-term substitutes for finasteride by any stretch of the imagination. So let's give Matt some suggestions, shall we? The option number one would be Dutasteride. Dutasteride is more potent than finasteride because it inhibits enzyme 5-alpha reductase, not just type 2 like finasteride, but also type 1. That makes it more potent in terms of inhibiting DHT overall. As we know, finasteride inhibits about 70% DHT in your system and about 50% in the scalp. And that 50% in the scalp can make it less effective over time by some guys with more aggressive hair loss, where even the rest of 50% of DHT not being inhibited in the scalp can cause problems, if you know what I mean. So that's what Dutasteride tries to solve. In fact, Dutasteride is able to block from 92 to 96% of the DHT in the system and from 50 to about 80% of DHT in the scalp, depends on which dose you take. More about the dosing in a minute, but before I want to share with you two key studies that have been done on men who in the past did not see any results with finasteride, no clinical improvement, as for example this study done on 35 Korean men using 0.5 milligram of Dutasteride per day after not being able to see any results with finasteride at least 6 months before. Now, I don't like this entirely because 6 months we know it's not enough time to see results, to see clinical response with finasteride, but if you look at the median, it was about 400 days. So on average, all of these 35 men were on finasteride 400 days and did not see any clinical response. Now, what happened after only 6 months after starting to take finasteride? 77.4% of those Korean men improved their hair situation from slightly to moderately. And again, it's only 6 months. We know that finasteride or Dutasteride both work between 12 to 24 months. This is when it's the best time to draw like a final conclusion on how the treatment worked. Now, we have another study that compared 0.5 milligram Dutasteride and 1 milligram Dutasteride. Both groups were assessed in this study for 24 weeks, so 6 months, and we have noticed that, again, the better results were observed in Dutasteride group, where the hair count significantly improved from 223 at the baseline on 246 hairs after 6 months, while in finasteride group it went from 227 on to only 231 hairs. And also the decrease of miniaturized hairs per square centimeter in the Dutasteride group was observed to be higher compared to finasteride group. In the Dutasteride group, it decreased from 65 onto 57 hairs after 6 months, and in the finasteride group, it went from 67 to 66. So it was pretty much the same. Now, if you watch this video, which I made on how many hairs can Dutasteride actually regrow, I was measuring the efficacy of Dutasteride versus Finasteride and how much hairs both can regrow after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and I then aggregated both graphs on top of one another, and you can see how Dutasteride is like always on top of Finasteride pretty much every 3 or 6 months and is able to just regrow hair better and also thicken it better. So make sure you watch it then. So as of today, we have overwhelming evidence on Dutasteride, especially the 0.5 milligram, being like a pretty go-to dose for everybody who either stopped seeing results with Finasteride or cannot tolerate Finasteride. Most of the dermatologists or hair transplant doctors who are knowledgeable about Dutasteride, who are experienced, they are going to be likely to recommend you 0.5 milligram Dutasteride as the next step. So it's not just my opinion, it's based on these studies, it's based on dermatologists and hair doctors who would be normally even recommending you this step. But the question I'm asking as a patient, is it a safe dose? For Matt. We don't want Matt to have problems with erection, we don't want him to experience brain fog, we don't want Matt to feel like he has no interest in sex, that some patients actually experience on Dutasteride, but also on Finasteride, to be honest. Now, interestingly, with Dutasteride, as it is with Finasteride or any other drug, most of the people who are meant to get side effects usually get them early on when starting the treatment, and you may have already noticed that whenever you get prescribed any new medication for acne, skin problems, or anything else, usually you may get the side effects earlier on. And that's the case also with Dutasteride. If we look at the study observing patients taking Dutasteride up to 48 months, that means up to 4 years, the highest percentage of patients experiencing side effects is in the first 6 months. It's 3% compared to the placebo group experiencing 1.4%. And this goes for decreased libido, the same for gynecomastia, the same for impotence, the same for ejaculation disorder. You see that the percentages in the Dutasteride group are higher than in the placebo group. In some, it's more significant, like for example, decreased libido or impotence, and this is actually a rather serious one, so I definitely do suggest you guys to look into this in depth and do your own research, because some values are definitely gonna be concerning for some of you guys, so definitely do not just take this drug. Use this information that I'm giving you for your own research and keep digging into this stuff. But hey, after month number 7, you can notice that these percentages or differences between decreased libido in placebo and Dutasteride group are not that high anymore. Gynecomastia still kind of significant here. And again, the gynecomastia, it's something that can actually get worse over time. And we can see that the percentage in the Dutasteride group that got gynecomastia is slightly increasing. And that's because if you have a bad hormone profile, meaning average testosterone levels, high estrogen levels, you are more prone to developing gynecomastia. Plus, there are some other factors like sensitivity of your receptors in your breast area and all these things that can promote the gynecomastia development. I have even friends who developed this condition without ever taking Finasteride or Dutasteride in the past. It can happen. But if you look generally, the side effects usually decrease over time in the Dutasteride group for all of these parameters, being it ejaculation disorder, impotence, besides gynecomastia, pretty much it's kind of decreasing over time. In this study, we can also observe 0.5 milligram Dutasteride being compared to Finasteride 5 milligram. This is 5 milligram Finasteride. It's 5 times higher compared to what you get prescribed, like Propecia or 1 milligram of Finasteride. So if you look at the side effect profile here, like impotence, decreased libido, ejaculation disorder, it's pretty much the same. So we can also see that 5 milligram Finasteride has about the same side effect profile like Dutasteride 0.5 milligram. We need to also disclose that 1 milligram Finasteride has lower side effect profile than 5 milligram Finasteride. So obviously, if there will be a study comparing safety profile of Dutasteride 0.5 milligram versus Finasteride 1 milligram, obviously you get a better side effect profile with finasteride 1 milligram. But some guys are willing to kind of risk it and just upgrade onto dutasteride, even if they're going to be slightly higher side effect profile, but they also get better efficacy and better response, and dutasteride being able to keep their hair for longer. Let's talk about whether there are some other side effects of oral dutasteride 0.5 milligram, what you should be concerned with. Now, there are going to be some positive side effects, namely testosterone levels peaking at around 25% almost with 0.5 milligram dutasteride at the 12-week mark. So that was more like a positive side effects. We want to have more testosterone, we want to have better workouts, we want to feel more alert, we want to regenerate quicker. So that's good, right? But there is one more thing that I want to also mention, and that would be dutasteride, but also finasteride affecting your semen. In this study, they actually compared 0.5 milligram dutasteride and 5 milligram finasteride and how it affected sperm motility, sperm morphology, and also semen volume. In this study, after 26 weeks of taking dutasteride 0.5 milligram, the sperm count has been affected significantly by 28.6%. And then after 52 weeks, it was slightly less, it was 25%, but still quite mild to significant even. And then semen volume also decreased about 30% with dutasteride after a year of taking it. And sperm concentration was only 3% decreased, which is not that bad and not really significant. However, the sperm motility also got reduced in about 6% with dutasteride and 12% with finasteride 5 milligram, not 1 milligram, but 5 milligram. Now, it is also very important to note that after discontinuing of finasteride treatment and very likely also the dutasteride treatment, all of these sperm markers like sperm volume, sperm count, sperm motility, and sperm morphology will come back to normal levels. In fact, this study on finasteride 1 milligram from 2013 has been observing exactly that. There was an average of 11.6-fold increase in sperm counts after finasteride discontinuation. Most of the men will not get such a drastic increase after discontinuing finasteride. It was only by men with severe oligospermia, that means having severely low sperm counts naturally, less than 5 millionths of sperm in 1 milliliter of semen. So the conclusion is that finasteride, even at low doses, may cause reduced sperm counts in some men. However, after discontinuation of the treatment, the sperm markers will go back to normal. It's also pretty advisable to do a sperm test before you start with dutasteride, just so you can test yourself again maybe several months after you started with the treatment to see how much all the parameters and markers regarding your sperm motility, morphology, and sperm counts actually decreased while on dutasteride. And more importantly, if you will want to have a child and you will want to have your sperm to have the most potency, you will probably want to get off of dutasteride for quite some time, but you will not really know what your healthy markers are because you did not measure them before. So that's why it's important to measure them, because we also know that dutasteride has a long half-life and it can take you many months until your sperm parameters and DHT levels may recover. So it's important for you to know what the healthy values used to be so you can estimate what the recovery time could potentially also be. And if we take a look at this chart, we will notice that if you take 0.5 milligram dutasteride, that would be this gray square. So here you can see that week 24, it was the time when they stopped taking it, and you can see that by the week 40, which means 4 months later, the DHT is still 20% inhibited. So you can see it takes quite a bit of time to, your DHT to come back to normal levels once you stop dutasteride. So it can be at least 4 months here. And the other study here suggests that coming back to your normal DHT levels after you stop taking dutasteride 0.5 milligram, and in this case it's a triangle, you can see from the week number 24 to week number 36, it's been like 3 months. And you can see that your DHT levels would have been still minus 20%. So it's at least 4 months, maybe 6 months until your DHT comes back to normal after taking 0.5 milligram dutasteride every day. Now, do you need to take it every day? That's the reason why some smart doctors, in my opinion, smart, they put patients on dutasteride 0.5 milligram initially, maybe just twice a week, and they see how patients are doing, whether they're able to stabilize the hair loss, whether they're able to get benefits on top of what finasteride was able or used to able to give them in the past. And if it's working well, the hair loss has stabilized better as with finasteride, they will leave that regimen on like 2 times of or 3 times 0.5 milligram dutasteride, and they don't go way beyond that. And I think it's smart because then you're kind of protecting yourself against all of these things, because the last thing you want is to like have your dutasteride just accumulate in your system for a long periods of time, and then once you want to take a break or stop it, you want to donate blood, you want to have a child, you need to wait months and months and months until this thing will leave your system. Now, overall, is it a guarantee that everybody who will switch to 0.5 milligram dutasteride will experience better results? No. But is it highly likely? Yes. But also, if finasteride has been working for you great and it's still working for you, I would not consider this, because that's what finasteride is doing for me. It's working for me. I do not consider this option right now, but I may consider it in the future. But don't worry if oral dutasteride did not sound the best to you and you still feel like you want to explore more options. In such case, let's take a look at 2 other options we have here. So the same thing what happened with finasteride. People had some side effects, they developed topical finasteride formulations. The same we would like to achieve with topical dutasteride, right? The problem is not many companies are pursuing development of topical dutasteride, maybe because it's too expensive or more expensive than finasteride and they just don't want to do it. However, we have some studies, unfortunately no studies on solely using topical dutasteride, however, studies on using topical dutasteride in conjunction with microneedling. We have 2 nice studies, in my opinion, one from 2018 using 0.02% of topical dutasteride with 1.5 millimeter needling, and another study from 2022 on 0.01% of topical dutasteride with 2.5 millimeter needling. However, if you want to emulate this protocol, I would definitely not advise you to take more than 0.025% dutasteride for the start, and I would just apply it once a week with microneedling, because 0.25% dutasteride was also the concentration they were observing in a recent study that unfortunately I didn't find the link to, but it was presented by Dr. Rachita Durat in this presentation, and they realized that topical dutasteride with this concentration had a 26% penetration after 12 hours. That means that only about 1/4 of that applied dutasteride will be actually penetrated if you don't apply needling. That's why we want to apply the microneedling. So what is the protocol here? We don't know how topical dutasteride actually performed as a standalone therapy. It's probably not going to be as good as with the microneedling. That's why all the studies are actually performing the microneedling and are achieving pretty good results, as in this study from 2018, where we can see a 12% hair density change in the group utilizing microneedling 1.5 millimeter with dutasteride 0.02%. Plus, they also measured the DHT levels of treated patients, and they only observed 5.3% decrease in the DHT after 20+ weeks, which is pretty amazing. I think if you consider topical dutasteride, the best way to utilize it is with the microneedling with the concentrations I have mentioned. You can use from 1 to 2 milliliters of this topical dutasteride per week. That's something that I started with myself, and that's what I would suggest. No medical advice, just suggestion. However, if you look at this interesting study where they observed one group using only microneedling 2.5 millimeter and the other group using 2.5 millimeter needle with topical dutasteride 0.01%, you notice that hair thickness went up to 14% more in the needling group and up to 22% more in the Dutasteride and needling group. Hair density per square centimeter went from 15 to 20% higher in the microneedling group and up to 44% in the topical Dutasteride group. In the occipital region, we can also notice significant improvements of up to 18% in the Dutasteride and microneedling group versus up to 8% in the needling group, and also hair density in the occipital region improved up to 13.9% in the needling group and up to 50% almost in the topical Dutasteride and needling group. All that done with 2.5 millimeter of Dermapen A6 that has been utilized on a weekly basis. Now, there's also an option of Dutasteride mesotherapy, which I think is also very interesting. It has never been compared to topical Dutasteride with microneedling, so we don't know which option would work better for hair loss stabilization and which is more effective in regrowing hair and thickening hair. However, I made a video on it like 2 years ago, so you may want to check it out to see what can be expected with Dutasteride mesotherapy, where they use actually needles and inject your scalp like PRP with Dutasteride 0.01% liquid. It takes maybe half an hour. It needs to be done by a certified practitioner, like a certified nurse or even hair transplant doctor. However, make sure that you respect the optimal protocol that has been used in the studies and you don't go way more than that. You don't needle your scalp way more often than that. You don't use way longer needle than that, and you don't use way higher of a concentration of Dutasteride they use in the studies, okay? All right, guys, this is the option number 3 that you could consider in case you are not able to take Finasteride anymore, or you don't want to take it anymore for whatever reason, but you still want to manage your hair loss long term. Topical anti-androgens, guys. Topical anti-androgens are drugs that will not lower the DHT further, unlike Finasteride or Dutasteride, but they will help the androgen receptor to be more resistant and more resilient towards DHT attacks. Let's call it this way. Now, the recent research on topical anti-androgens is pretty promising. We have especially the pyrolutamide that is being currently in development by Chinese company Kintor in the last third human trial, and hopefully will be FDA approved within 2 years. However, there is still that uncertainty about will they be able to keep my hair long term, because we have the studies on Finasteride that it can keep your hair for 10 years, 5 years, but we don't have something like that on anti-androgens. How strong a topical anti-androgen is will depend on your concentration. So there are certain anti-androgens like RU or Fluoridil that don't have such a strong binding affinity, or they do not compete as strongly with DHT for the same androgen receptor of the hair follicle, and thus you need a higher concentration of them to overpower or eventually the androgen receptor and protect a receptor against DHT. However, with higher dose, higher concentration of these weaker anti-androgens on paper, you increase the side effect profile. That's why RU58841 and Fluoridil, these are things where I've seen some people getting results even long term, but these are just few anecdotal reports I know, but most people are quite hesitant. For example, with Fluoridil, it's a 2% solution branded as U-Capil, and it hasn't been shown very potent. So either you use more of that concentration, but then again, you increase the side effect potential of the Fluoridil, and it seemed like not many people were willing to do it since Fluoridil is also expensive and they just were not sure. However, with RU58841, we have seen some success, especially with 5% RU. That's like the standard solution. Some people experimented with 7.5 or even 10%. I do not suggest it. It's quite a high dose. You can definitely get some side effects with it. However, it could be potent for your hair if you can tolerate it. If I would be in this situation, considering topical anti-androgen seriously as my #1 hair loss stabilizer, which again, minoxidil is not, just for your information, I would be probably leaning into pyrolutamide or CB0301, as they have the most research behind them, backing their safety and efficacy. That's something that RU58841 doesn't have. It has been in the human trial phase already by the early 2000s by a French company, but they didn't publish the data, probably because there were side effects. Something probably didn't work very well with the RU58841. That's why they did not publish it and did never pursue the potential commercialization of RU58841. So I would probably stick to pyrolutamide. 0.5% pyrolutamide seems to be the ideal dose. That's the dose they will use for the trial number 3, and it seems like that's the dose that has the potential to be commercialized. With CB0301, it's the 7.5% dose. Both of these products are quite expensive at the moment. We do not have so many reliable providers or suppliers, in my opinion. You can use these products at your own risk. There are some providers out there. They're sourcing it from China, hopefully verifying the purity in a laboratory as well, so they can double check that the ingredient is 99% plus pure. Hopefully they don't lie and they sell it to you with good intentions. I don't know. I have not tried personally any CB or pyrolutamide, but there are some guys who have already tried those. Comment below if you are one of them. Maybe you can help other guys and share with them where you got it, whether it was a trusted source or whether you had it lab tested yourself and double checked that the purity of that anti-androgen was there. And that was it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this insightful piece of information, and if you want to have the same insights from me personally onto your particular case, you can check out my one-on-one consulting services. You can find more information to it in the link below in the description, and how it all works. I can help you with your hair loss issues, hair transplant, how to get your hair back the best way, pretty much combining hair loss medication, transplant, and scalp micropigmentation. So if you're interested in that, how to choose the right clinic and avoiding the bad steps and decisions onto your journey, make sure you give it a look, and I will be happy to support you in person. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to be seeing you soon in another video. Take care.